As a Catholic Buddhist, I can't resist in this time. It's Christmas time to talk about Jesus. I'm always looking forward to and there is a book, an old book by Lama Yeshe, who is the founder of the FPMT, the organization the center belongs to. It's called Silent Mind, Holy Mind, and it is a collection of talks he gave in Kopan Monastery in Nepal at Christmas time. And so I thought, since Lama Yeshe is doing it, I can also do it. And just to start with a quote from Lama Yeshe. That's him, Lama Yeshe. Just one sentence, which kind of summarizes this evening. If you really understood, you would recognize that what Jesus taught was, quote unquote, love. It is as simple and as profound as that. So love here as a mystery, not as something we can define, something which is and will remain a mystery, but something in us really knows what love in the context of mentioning Jesus means. So I would like to ask you for this evening to drop all the kind of negative connotation one might have with church and Jesus. So I'm going to try to do that. One challenge we have, not only in the Christian teachings, but also in the Buddhist teachings, is that we take myth as literal. So people discuss, is there really something like a virgin birth or something like that? And that's a complete misunderstanding of these stories. So in the Buddhist teachings you could also discuss, was Padmasambhava born from a lotus? Obviously not. Was Jesus born from a virgin? Obviously not. But there's a mythic state in the world's religion where the practitioners take these stories literally. And then what we miss is that they are actually describing spiritual experience, mystic experience. So when we see these stories like that, we bring them into the present moment, into our life. You can read the story of the Buddha or the story of Jesus in a way that it becomes really transformational for you today, tonight. And I love the stories around Jesus, and I know them all. So I picked my favorite ones. Tomorrow is Santa Lucia, and as a Catholic, I'm always happy to find that in Protestantic wasteland there's still saints. And it's so beautiful. I remember many years when I was living in Vesterbro, like really in the dark part of Copenhagen, like close to this homeless place for homeless men. And I didn't know about Santa Lucia, and then there was this singing outside, and I opened the window and there was this procession going through Vesterbro, along the junkies and prostitute, and passing this really dark place, this for homeless men, this place. Yes. And wow, it's like angels with light. Bringing light into darkness. So I guess some of the girls here, women here, they were there. And so that's also a beautiful way to connect with these stories, and with your ancestors and with your culture. Remembering childhood experiences, the light. And back then you were not in a rational state, so something could be touched, and then quite often it is being destroyed by the shit happening in church. But it is one way to make these experiences, to connect them with your roots, rather than visualizing a Buddha surrounded by light. So the light, so it's beautiful that there are these lights today. Yeah. So light has such a deep meaning here in the North. The celebration of light. And here light, not just, light, but Christ consciousness. The light of Christ consciousness. That's what Santa Lucia carries. The light of Christ consciousness. So let's start with a simple sitting quietly, so we have some time to arrive. If you like, you can close your eyes. If you keep your eyes open, you keep them relaxed, just letting the light in. And then you notice what happens when you start to pay more attention to your inner life. There's a shift from the busyness of the day into being here, the busyness of your life. And with that comes also a shift from the head into the body. And if it's helpful, you can put lightly attention to the breath, so that with each in-breath you slide into the body, even down into your feet. And as best as you can, you welcome all the guests in your guest house, the body, the guest house. And then with the out breaths, There might be the possibility to soften a bit, to release. In your belly and in your shoulders. And of course there's thoughts, but the invitation is that they become less important, so you don't emphasize them so much. And there might be some tiredness or restlessness, or you bring something difficult into this moment. And what we explore here is what happens if you let that be okay. This is how I feel. It's fine, it's okay. And then if you find yourself being caught or entangled in the stream of thinking, without making a big deal out of it, you slide back into the belly, into your hands. There's nothing you need to think about right now. Nothing you need to do. Just being here, being who you are. Letting go of the control freak. And then even if there's movement in your body or in your thoughts, still you could also appreciate or acknowledge the stillness or the space which arises when we sit quietly together in the spirit of love. So let yourself be meditated by the field which arises when we sit quietly together. It's more a listening with your heart, with your belly. And then we connect with light, light surrounding us, as if we are sitting in the morning sun after a night of terror. warming. Or bathing in light from all directions. As if you're surrounded by angels. And our heart can reach out to all the people right now who are sitting like us in the presence of the Divine, in their homes or in churches and monasteries, Buddhist or non-Buddhist. There's people praying for you right now. Lama Yeshe says that all spiritual paths are about discovering that inner light, the kingdom of God within, as Jesus says. And that's why we're here tonight, to be reminded that there is this light within in all of us, and that this precious human life is an opportunity to allow that light shine through you. Returning, resting. And feeling the Buddha within, the Christ within, the Goddess within. Before I will share some of the teachings of Jesus, I would like to remind us of the story, the myth we actually celebrate at Christmas. And you all know the stories, the important ingredients. So there's Mary and Joseph, and they have to go to Bethlehem because Joseph was born there. And there's a counting. So they travel there, and Mary is pregnant. And when they reach Bethlehem, they don't find a place in the inn. The inn is full. And then they find that stable. And then there's animals. And then there's shepherds. And then there's the 3 wise men. And then there's that baby. And it's stupid to ask, was it like that? And when was it? It doesn't matter. It's a myth. And this myth of the virgin birth you find in all major traditions, also in Buddhism. So what does it mean today for us? The stable is the body. Christ consciousness is that, what is called in the Buddhist tradition, Buddha nature. And Christ consciousness can't be born in the inn, can't be born in the shopping mall. The animals, they represent our instinctual nature. The star represents that pull towards the light, which many of us have felt already in childhood, that there's something more. It pulls from within, but also pulls from outside. If you don't follow that call, you waste your life, and you know it. It's very sad. The wise man from the east, the Tibetan Lamas, they're coming from the right. That's the right hemisphere of the brain. The shepherds who see the star and get afraid, and an angel appears and says, "Fürchte dich nicht." I know only the German quotes. Don't be afraid. So the virgin birth describes, like in the birth of Padmasambhava. So Padmasambhava is born from a lotus. So Christ consciousness is born, has no condition. It has no father and mother. It is there already. It was never born, will never die. It's just waiting for us to follow the stars so that it can shine. So Christmas is a time where we can allow that birth within us, the virgin birth. But the word Christ comes from a Sanskrit word. The Sanskrit word is Krishna. And there's really amazing parallels between the myth around Krishna and Jesus. So we can talk about Jesus the man, and that's what I also like, because Jesus is so earthy, so he suffers, but just like us. He is joyful, he hangs out with prostitutes and in pubs and drinks wine. He's a carpenter. He approaches all people. He's also a rebel. He rebels against the establishment. And he has what is called periods of the dark night of the soul, just like us, with the three temptations. In that night where his students were supposed to pray with him and they all fell asleep and he was alone. And he knew what's going to happen and he was praying, may this cup pass me. So there's so many description within the life stories of Jesus, and one does not even need to go to the Thomas Evangelium, which is not in the official Bible, and that's like the most mystic gospel. But even if we stick with the traditional ones, like the three temptations. So Jesus goes into the desert into retreat for 40 days. And he encounters what we all encounter when we do retreat. It's describing the process of retreat. I mean, one could just follow when he carries the cross, these 12 waypoints, what happens there. In the Tibetan tradition, you have the practice of Tonglen, so giving and taking. That is the practice of taking what we usually reject and give what we attach to. So it's a practice of opening to the pain in the world and giving the world what is needed. These stories, they are so beautiful when we take them in, when we relive them, and not seeing them as some ancient stories from the past. They are a description of the unfolding human consciousness into Christ consciousness. What I also like with Jesus is his wrath. He's not a chicken. Yeah, in the Buddhist tantric tradition, we have these wrathful deities, with fire and flames. That's exactly how Jesus sometimes acts. When there's injustice, he speaks out. He's not afraid. So, I mean, imagine, after the break I want to do a Jesus meditation. What I'm saying now is a bit preparation to that, so that I kind of, I mean, we have all different needs or different experiences with Jesus, but I think we all can find something which touches you, so that the Guru Yoga with Jesus makes sense, or I call it, now these days I call it the mentor bonding process. The mentor bonding process, because the word guru is like you lose 80% of the people in the room in Scandinavia just by mentioning the word guru. So after the break, Lama Yesh is also doing that, just using the same process of the Guru Yoga with Jesus. So, yeah. So imagine, like, so what one part what can make Guru Yoga so powerful for us is that we practice that with the living person. So we know how it feels to be in the presence of the Dalai Lama. So, and then in the meditation you have like a felt sense of how does embodied unconditional love feel, because you have felt it. You remember, your body remembers. So obviously, like also with Guru Yoga, this is not worshipping. So while you do the Guru Yoga, you are aware that you are working with a projection. You are actually using the Dalai Lama as an outer reflection of Christ, the Christ consciousness within, the Buddha nature within. So you project it out and you see it out there, and then in the Guru Yoga, it dissolves and you become aware of the Dalai Lama within. So I want to say some hopefully inspiring things about Jesus. So when we call upon Jesus, so not all the other stuff which you might connect with him, can rest, and you can connect with the essence of what Christ consciousness stands for, Krishna consciousness. I didn't say what I wanted to say. So imagine how it is when Jesus steps into the room. He's the most sexy man you ever saw. Really. He's healthy in body and mind. He's vital. He heals people just through his presence. Not as the man Jesus, but as the embodiment of Christ consciousness. The way he moves, the way he enjoys life, the way he eats bread and drinks wine. It's like the Dalai Lama. It's like when the Dalai Lama steps into a room of 10,000 people. It's like, people start to cry. Just like that. And most of them don't understand anything what he says. It's just the way he blows his nose makes people so happy. You should see it. People, they travel such long distance to hear him laugh, or hardly anyone goes there for the teachings because they are beyond most of the people. It's just a man. Yeah. And that makes also the Dalai Lama so inspiring. He's a man. He's on earth. Just like Jesus. We would all fall in love with Jesus when he would come into this room. He would silence all your petty worries. Self-centered, narcissistic self-importance. Silence. So like, when I read the stories of Jesus, I can feel him. I don't read these stories as something which happens 2,000 years ago. I can feel him. I can feel the man. I can feel his love. And his vitality, his joy, but also his suffering. And that's so inspiring with Jesus. Buddha is a bit he's above, he's already enlightened. In the Tibetan tradition, he has been enlightened from the beginning. Yeah? But Jesus is sweating and bleeding, and he is doubting, and he is struggling, the whole story. Up to the end. And then we think, it's like also with the Buddhist myth, our rational mind then reject these stories, and that's like rejecting a poem because it doesn't make sense to the rational mind, and then missing what is actually the human experience the artist wants to express through his art. Some people, they go to a museum and look at painting, and they look at the description, where it is painted and what style it is, and they miss the painting. So and the same happens with these stories. We miss the message. So I want to start with one of my favorite stories. This is a life changer. This story. And I still remember when I guess I've heard, I was raised in a Catholic family, and I loved my children's Bible. It was my favorite book. And so I guess I have heard this story before, but I still remember when I got it. And I was around 10, and we went to this small church every Sunday, and I still remember the priest telling the story, and I kind of downloaded it, and it had an impact on my life. It still has. So this is the story where there's a woman, and she was unfaithful, and her punishment was stoning to death. So it's this scene where the man, they're surrounding this woman, this young woman, and they had these big stones in their hands, and they were just about to stone that woman to death. So now we are kind of in a desert-like area, so it's good to kind of feel these stories. Yeah? And we can all imagine that kind of self-righteous man. And of course, this is describing an aspect of us. So that's the thing. The self-righteousness, the puffed up. Oh, how can anyone do this? This needs to be punished. They are evil. This person is evil. Yeah. And we have the right to kill that person because it's an evil person. So, Jesus steps in. Imagine. Jesus steps in, embodied Christ consciousness into the scene. And he just says one sentence. And I quote now from Matthew. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Silence. In the Buddhist teachings, they call these moments the roar of the lion. And when the lion roars in the jungle, the whole jungle gets quiet. And because he is an embodiment of Christ consciousness, these words are very powerful. So the man becomes self-aware, and they all drop the stone and just walk away. The evil is not out there. It's in you. It's in us. And the only response to evil can be love. That's the only thing which makes sense for Christ consciousness. Read these stories. Initially, in the Buddhist teachings, of course, in the Mahayana tradition, in the Tibetan tradition, of course, they talk a lot about compassion and love. But there's something in Jesus' energy which I was missing. So in my own practice, I was really happy that I never lost the connection with Jesus, and I brought it into my Buddhist studies. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I felt something was missing. Maybe it is this need also to have this connection with my ancestors and with my childhood. So one of the really powerful teaching of Jesus, and it comes up in different settings and different situations, is love your enemies. And I just give you an example for Matthew again. You have heard the law that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven. For He gives His sunlight to both the evil and the good. And He sends rain on the just and unjust alike. And so that's like a recurring theme in the life story of Jesus, that He turns to the outcast. He turns to the ones who are rejected because they are evil. They are the bad people. They are not part of the tribe. That's where Jesus turns to. If you love only those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even corrupt tax collectors do that much. I like that, It's like, even corrupt tax collectors do like that. If you are kind only to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? And so there is this is also good. Why do you see the splinter in the eye of the other and don't see the big beam in your own eye? So this is really like shadow work. At one point, we realize that we never ever can point to someone and saying, how can you do this? You are evil. Because if you turn that around, you know exactly how you can do that. How you can rape, how you can torture, how you can be violent. You know, because you're doing it. We are doing it, not because we are so suppressed and cultivated, not in maybe not in big ways, but in our sneaky, suppressed ways, we rape, we are violent, we torture. And if you now feel, no, I'm such a good person, you're lying. You have not looked deep enough. You have been grown and raised in a country where there was always water, food, and shelter. So also, now another topic. Actually, Jesus was teaching the power of now. I mean, you don't need to read Eckhart Tolle. Read Jesus. So, just one example of Jesus teaching the power of now. So don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. That's the power of now. So, this evening is quite fine for all of us. Yeah? So, right this moment. Yeah? So, you're all well fed, and you had water today, and you all have shelter tonight, and so we are fine, basically. I mean, we made it. I mean, yeah. For today, it can change, but for today, we are safe. On the way home, we are not afraid to be hit by snipers. So, we could relax. We could be here. But instead, we go to the problems of tomorrow, which are, if you investigate into the nature of the problems of tomorrow, like how they exist as story, as fantasy. And it will be different anyway. And some people really love to go to the problems in the past. I mean, we basically can fuck up any good moment in our life by not being here. This is the power of now. That's present moment awareness. In present moment awareness, we are almost always fine. Not always, but almost always, particularly if you live in Denmark. And it's amazing how we destroy that for us. So this is not enough to just kind of see that and agree with that, but it is then actually a practice of being able to do that, of noticing when you are not doing that and bringing your mind back. So don't worry about tomorrow. For tomorrow will bring its own worries. The best preparation for tomorrow worries is to be here. The best preparation for the problem tomorrow is to do what is most important, and that is to connect with the light within. Because then, if you do this today, it will be there for you also tomorrow. So, the way you want to be tomorrow, connected with what is really important to you, connected with your heart. That's how we want to be tomorrow. The way to make that happen is to be there now. This is all we have. If there's something like reality, which is debatable, then it's certainly now. You see, the past is gone, the future has not happened yet. This is the power of now. There's so much I don't know. So, before the break, I want to go to his last words. Yeah. So he's hanging there on the cross after having practiced Tonglen. Yeah. So, and again, it's so good to kind of make it, to go into the scene Not with the question, did this ever happen, and how did they put people on the cross and they didn't nail them? No, but just to get the scene, to get the feeling, what kind of experience is being described in this myth. It's a myth. Maybe there was never someone like Jesus. I think there was, but doesn't matter. So he's hanging there. And so the last words, they are actually different in the four Gospels. But I put them together as a sequence. It's more beautiful. I'm a bit creative with myth, yeah, because it doesn't matter if he said something or not. It doesn't matter. So the first thing, forgiveness. Yeah? So that's a big thing in the teachings of Jesus, forgiveness. So now forgiveness not like as, no, I need to forgive, but forgiveness as a process which rests on the inside into the fundamental innocence of everyone. And the inside, why are people violent? Where does that come from? Why do we do these stupid things? Destroying this planet, going to war. So these are not evil people who are doing this. So from the Buddhist point of view, we all of us, we act like that out of confusion, out of ignorance. We act like that because we have lost the connection with Christ consciousness. And that is forgiveness. And it can't be just decided like, or it can't be like something, yeah, I need to forgive. No? There's profound work to do in order for forgiveness to arise. So, in one of the Gospels, his last words are, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They know not what they do. Hanging on the cross, having had this 3 days of torture, of carrying the cross, his students abandoning him, one of the students delivering him to the Romans, one of the students, Petrus, I don't know how he is called in English, denying that he is connected to them. He is alone. And he has done nothing bad. And what he says is, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So then, this is really powerful. God, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's the dark night of the soul. The end of his life. Having had all this mystical experience, feeling one with God and having this power streaming out of them, raising dead, healing lepers, fighting demons, and then having these crises in between, the 3 temptations, and then in that night when he is abandoned by his students, and then you would think, there will be a good end of the story. No. His last words in one of the Gospels is, my God, why have you forsaken me? And we, as part of a genuine awakening, the dark night of the soul is part of the journey. Doubt, losing trust, losing faith, losing your sangha, your teacher messing up, the lineage broken. Yeah. Or you have powerful experiences which are so difficult that you feel it's just hopeless, the whole thing. So, and then the third from another gospel. So that's the last words. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Father, in your hands I commit my spirit. So that's the surrender. That's the surrender into Christ consciousness. That's the surrender into unconditional love. That's leaving behind the egoic structure. That's leaving behind your agenda and becoming a tool, or becoming a portal for Christ consciousness to come through you. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Complete surrender. Okay, so let's have a break and then we will have our encounter with Jesus.